Ever feel like you're kind of chasing after happiness, like it's always just out of reach?
Oh, yeah.
Like you should be enjoying life more, but your mind's stuck on rewind, replaying the past, or fast forwarding to worries.
You're hitting on something a lot of people struggle with, feeling disconnected from right now, the present moment.
Totally. So, how do we actually get there? To actually living in the moment. We're doing a deep dive into Eckhart Tolle's The Power of Now. It's a book that digs into this.
The Power of Now has become like a modern spiritual classic, and for good reason. Tolle gives us these practical tools to quiet all that mental noise, all those thoughts, and actually experience the peace and joy of being present.
And we're going right to the source, right into the excerpts to break it down, especially how we can use these ideas in our own lives.
Because it's one thing to understand it all intellectually, it's another to really live it,
100%. So, where do we start? Tolle's own journey to all this is pretty wild. There's this part in the book, he's talking about this really dark time, like rock bottom, where he just thinks, I cannot live with myself any longer.
Wow.
Can you imagine feeling so overwhelmed by your own thoughts that you actually get to that point?
Yeah, that feeling of just utter despair, almost like your whole internal world just crumbles.
Exactly.
But it's often in those dark moments when everything feels like it's falling apart,
Yeah.
that real transformation can happen.
And that's what happened to Tolle. He describes it as like being pulled into this vortex of energy. He's terrified, his body's shaking. It sounds honestly kind of scary.
It's like he's going through this total dismantling of his reality, his sense of self, everything he thought he knew.
And then, bam, this huge shift. The world's completely different. He's blown away by simple things, birds singing, the light at dawn.
It's like seeing everything for the first time, like a newborn.
Totally. And it wasn't just a fleeting thing. Tolle talks about living in this state of indescribable bliss and sacredness for years afterwards.
Yeah.
Talk about a life change. So how do we even get there? What causes such a huge shift?
Well, Jolie says it starts by understanding this thing he calls the egoic mind.
Okay.
And this is where things get really interesting, I think. Tolle doesn't say the ego is, like, evil or bad. He sees it more like a tool that's just not working right in our lives.
I like that.
Like he uses an analogy of a dog chewing on a bone.
Oh, I remember that one. Okay.
So that dog, that's our egoic mind, always gnawing on the same thoughts, worries, regrets, even when there's no problem to solve, just stuck in this loop, doing more harm than good.
It's so true. It's like our minds become addicted to problems even when there's nothing to actually fix.
Yeah, exactly. And that constant mental chatter, that dwelling on stuff, it just drains us, keeps us from really being present.
Which brings us right back to the power of now. It's about being here now, not lost in our heads.
Exactly. Tolle's point is that the present moment is the only place we can really find true joy, peace, and fulfillment. Not in the past, not in the future.
Makes you think, right? Am I the one in control of my mind, or are my thoughts running the show?
Big question.
It really is.
It's about becoming more self-aware. Paying attention to those thought patterns without judging them, just noticing how often our minds pull us away from what's actually happening.
So we've been talking about that egoic mind, right? Like stuck in its own little loop, like that dog with its bone.
Right.
But it's not just our thoughts that stop us from being present, is it? Tolle says there's this other thing, kind of sneaky. He calls it the pain body.
The pain body. Yeah, it's almost like it's a whole other thing living inside us. Like carrying all that old hurt, the traumas, the emotional baggage.
It really does feel that way sometimes. Like those old wounds have a life of their own.
They do. Tolle describes it as this energy field building up over time. And it feeds off negativity. It wants to survive by dragging us back into those painful experiences, those thought patterns.
So how does it even do that? Like, how do we end up giving it energy, feeding this pain body without even realizing?
Well, think about a time when you were feeling pretty good, content, peaceful. Then bam, something small happens. And suddenly you're hit with this wave of anger, sadness, frustration. That's the pain body waking up.
Oh, I get it.
It's looking for more food.
More negativity.
Right, to keep it going.
Like it's got us on speed dial, just waiting to pounce and ruin the mood.
Exactly. And here's the thing. The pain body, it doesn't just feed on our own stuff, our own negativity. It wants to pull us into situations, external situations, that match that same energy.
Oh, I've noticed that.
Like, have you ever noticed how certain people, certain places just seem to trigger those same old negative emotions in you?
All the time. Like you get in the same argument with your partner. Every time. Even if it's about something totally different each time. It's that same energy.
Exactly. It's the pain body at work.
Right.
It's looking for familiar territory.
Wow. So it's like keeping those negative cycles going.
Right. And this is keeping us stuck in the past, you see,
Right.
which keeps us from being present.
Totally.
Tolle says it perfectly. He says, pain can only feed on pain. Pain cannot feed on joy. It finds it quite indigestible.
Yeah, it's true.
So the more we dwell in that negativity, the stronger that pain body gets.
So how do we break free? How do we stop feeding this thing and actually experience that present moment joy that Tolle's talking about?
Well, that's where the real power of the now comes in.
So we've been talking about this egoic mind, right? Those endless thought loops and that pain body, always looking for more negativity to feed on.
Right.
Seems kind of bleak, but Tolle doesn't leave us hanging, does he? There's got to be a way out of this cycle.
Oh, absolutely. That's where the real power of now comes in. It's about realizing we actually have a choice here. We don't have to let these unconscious patterns run the show.
Like,
Yeah.
we've been on autopilot this whole time, and Tolle's handing us the steering wheel.
Exactly. And awareness is key, right?
Yeah.
It starts by just noticing when our minds drift off to the past or future. Tolle calls this psychological time, and he says it's the root of so much suffering.
Because when we're stuck in the past, it's usually regret, guilt, all that, and the future. It's just anxiety and worry waiting to happen.
Exactly. Our minds are either replaying these old movies or writing new ones filled with stress. And most of it never even happens.
And all that's happening in our heads while real life is just passing us by.
Right.
So how do we break free from that, from this psychological time warp?
Tolle's really clear about this. The present moment, that's all we have. It's the only place where you can really experience true joy, peace, fulfillment. He even calls it the narrow gate that leads to life.
The narrow gate, I like that. It makes it sound like it takes some effort, like it's something we have to actually choose, not just stumble upon.
Yeah, exactly. And a good way to start shifting our awareness to the present is to just ask ourselves throughout the day, is there joy, ease, lightness in what I'm doing right now?
Such a simple question. But I can see how powerful that could be. If the answer is no, that's a sign, isn't it? We're not present, we're letting our thoughts and emotions pull us away.
Exactly. And that's our cue to just gently bring our attention back to the present. Maybe take a few deep breaths, notice what our body feels like, or just appreciate something beautiful around us.
So it's not about forcing ourselves to be happy all the time. It's about noticing where our attention is and choosing to redirect it when we need to.
Exactly. It's a practice. And nobody's perfect at it. Our minds will wander. It's just about bringing ourselves back without judgment.
And Tolle does give us some tools for that. I really like the one about using physical space to get to what he calls the space of no mind.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
It sounds kind of contradictory, but it's actually really simple when you think about it. It's about becoming aware of the space around us, the space between objects, the emptiness that's surrounding everything.
Yes. Instead of being trapped in our thoughts, we shift our attention outward to the physical space.
So instead of getting lost in our thoughts, we shift outward to the space around us.
Right. And when you do that, it creates a gap in that mental noise, like hitting pause on all those thoughts. You tap into a deeper sense of stillness, of spaciousness inside yourself.
But using the external world to reflect the vastness, the emptiness, that's also inside us.
Yeah, got it.
Yep.
And when you tap into that inner space, that space of no mind, it's like you're opening up to this unmanifested potential, this realm that's beyond our thoughts and emotions.
That reminds me of a story Tolle tells about a Zen master. Someone asked him to sum up all his teachings in one sentence. You remember what he said?
Of course, all that arises passes away.
So simple, but so profound. Reminds me that everything changes, Nothing lasts forever. The good, the bad, the highs, the lows.
And if we can just remember that impermanence, we can start to let go a little. Stop clinging to things we can't control.
It's about finding that peace within ourselves. The part that doesn't change, even when everything else is. That's the power of now, isn't it?
Beautifully put. It's a lifelong journey, this practice of being present. But even those little moments, when we're truly here, now those moments can change everything.
They really can. And for anyone listening, if you're feeling inspired, go check out The Power of Now. It's a book you can come back to again and again and always get something new out of it.
Absolutely. The best gift you can give yourself is it's time for inner exploration.
Well said. And until next time, may you find moments of stillness, moments of joy, and experience the deep presence of the power of now.